And welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another scintillating episode of the Chokeslam Wrestling Debate for our first rematch here in the Chokeslam. Ryan Payne and Richard Schwartz faced each other in the first round of our 8-player tournament that took place a little while back. In that match, Richard came out on top, but Ryan has made a valiant comeback to get back to this position where now both of our players are getting another opportunity to face one another. And I guess technically there's a little bit more on the line here because the winner of this match will play Sean in a number one contender match to find out who will play Nico, the Chokeslam Wrestling Debate champion. Still have no idea how that happened. But without further ado, let's meet our two players. Let's start with Richard. Richard, you're getting another opportunity to potentially challenge for the title. What's going through your mind, knowing that you're going to have to, once again, take down a foe that you've dealt with in the past?
Oh, hey, I'm just happy to be here. Ryan was a tough opponent. First of all, I'm just glad he's not at Starbucks today like last time. Now I can fully hear what's going on with this match. I really want to win so I can make one step closer to a rematch with Nick. I believe could have made, but it was a close game. I plan to go for the belt again, but I wish Ryan the best of luck, and this should be fun regardless. And I am not taking lightly to Ryan. Ryan is a strong opponent. I would never underestimate him. So yeah, I'm ready to go.
Well, first off, thank you, Richard. You took my gag. Now I got to come up with some new material when I ask Ryan. So, Ryan, you were knocked out in the first round against Richard. You then had to make a comeback. You took care of a great match against Matt Graham. Now coming into this opportunity, this was kind of set up kind of on different circumstances that you had this opportunity now. Knowing now that you have an opportunity to get a number one contender shot, how do you go about this match knowing that, as I said to Richard, you're playing a opponent that you have played in the past?
Well, clearly, I think what definitely killed me in my last match against Richard was the choice of venue I chose, because clearly you saw I was shouting throughout the entire match because I desperately wanted to be heard, and that's where Richard was able to beat me. In this situation, I'm in a quiet area. The only thing that I can hear is my voice reverberating off the walls. But honestly, Richard, he definitely beat me. He definitely showed me a few weak points in my area, and also in the way I argued for my choices, what definitely showed with the judges. And yeah, Matt Graham was no slouch at all. We were going pound for pound every single question. And it was pretty clear from there on in that when it comes to at least Chokeslam, or if I'm doing TV fights or Game Zone, no matter who I'm facing, don't underestimate them. Don't underestimate the choices of questions or answers I have, because let's say I might have something that's a slam dunk, but then ultimately it's cut from underneath me. And so moving forward, if I want to earn this number one contender shot, I have to gain some retribution against Richard and hopefully some redemption for myself.
Well said. So without further ado, best of luck to both of our players. I think this is going to be a great match tonight. We've got some great questions lined up. So first off, let's get into the rules. As usual, per Chokeslam, this is the first to 3 points. There'll be 4 main round questions. Should a 3-0 knockout happen, we will not get into the fourth question. At any point, both of our players can have a 1-minute extension at any point during a pre or post closing argument. How it's going to work, we will give the question. Both of our players will have a 90-second opening debate. It would then take part in a 5-minute debate period, and then we will have a 60-second closing argument. That is, unless both of our players choose to use their minute extensions. If there is a 2-2 tie at the end of the 4 main round questions, we will have 1 speed round question to determine who will come out on top. So both of our players, I'm sure, are aware of the rules. They've done it before. They've played each other before. So without further ado, we're going to get into the first question, and this is kind of the be-all, end-all when it comes to wrestling. When it comes to wrestling, obviously the thing that many people love about professional wrestling is feuds and rivalries and all of that stuff. So we wanted to ask both of our players, what is wrestling's greatest feud in history? So we are going to go to Richard first. Richard, what is your choice for wrestling's greatest feud?
There has been a lot of great feuds in all of wrestling throughout the years, back and forth. You've had Shawn Michaels versus Bret Hart. You've had Stone Cold versus The Rock. Triple H versus Stone Cold. You've had AJ versus Samoa Joe. But there is in particular that not only was amazing and great to see in the ring, both in commentary and in the physical ring present match, but it also, this feud changed the way WWE thought and the fans thought would actually happen. And that is the feud with Daniel Bryan versus The Authority. It all started when Daniel Bryan defeated John Cena for the WWE Championship, when Triple H pedigreed Daniel Bryan and had Randy Orton use the Money in the Bank to win the championship. This feud lasted for about over a year, roughly, and it ended with Daniel Bryan becoming the WWE Champion at WrestleMania. It was not only one of the best feuds of all time, we've seen some amazing matches with this feud, a lot of in-ring skills, a lot of in-ring participation with the WWE Universe, and it was just all around a fantastic feud, and I believe it is the greatest WWE or greatest wrestling feud of all time.
All right, so Richard goes with Daniel Bryan versus The Authority. Let's now go to Ryan. Ryan, what have you selected for wrestling's all-time greatest feud?
Well, as Richard said, there are a lot of great feuds in wrestling. I mean, there are so many you can almost count off of the back, like you can count off the back of your hand. Some that defined a generation, some was what helped elevate the careers of wrestling superstars, along with just creating great baby faces and heels along the way. I not only defined a generation, but also created two of the most iconic characters and that is Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Mr. McMahon. This feud slowly started beginning after the Montreal Screwjob, when Vince McMahon went from commentator to full-fledged boss. He was no longer hiding it, and it was during this time he was trying to tell people to work within the system, and you got Stone Cold Steve Austin as that anti-authority figure, that anti-hero in a sense, that just would not bend to the system. He wanted, if he wanted a title shot, he wanted to fight, he wanted it now. He wasn't going to wait, or he wasn't going to go through no red tape. And it's because the fact he would not listen to Mr. McMahon began what is pretty much rivalry in all of the company, to what pretty much defined the Attitude Era, creating great heels, great stables, also solidifying Vince McMahon as the most arching and most frustratingly hated villain. And I'm going to stop here.
All right, so we've got two kind of similar feuds in the grand scheme, but we'll see how both of our players will go about this. So the 5-minute debate period will begin when the first person begins speaking.
Richard, I mean, nothing against your choice for Daniel Bryan against The Authority. It was a good feud going toward it, but to really look at it at its bare bones, it really did kind of feel as if they were trying to at least take the elements of Mr. McMahon and Stone Cold, pretty much the heel authority figure, and just try to create, and just move forward from on there with its dominance, choosing its own paper or corporate champ. Man did with this corporation. I mean, you can see with Triple H and Stephanie, there were so many elements they were taking from the Attitude Era. There's kind of one of the things that would have hurt that there was just a lot too many comparisons to draw from it.
Vince and Stone Cold did their Vince's rules. You obey by him, and if not, and that's what Stone Cold did for Vince. It was Stone Cold too. He didn't believe that. Whereas Triple H feud with Daniel Bryan, it was Triple H didn't think Daniel Bryan was a star, that he wasn't a star. And that is the difference between your feud. It was not a copy. The problem with your feud, though, is, yeah, they had great commentary, great mic skills, but when it comes to their matches, a feud is more than just talking. It is their actual matches. There has not been a very memorable Vince match. And Vince was already Vince McMahon after, you said it yourself, the Montreal Screwjob. So Vince was already like that before he had that feud with Stone Cold. And Stone Cold was already 316 when he won the King of the Ring.
But here's the thing, though. With Vince, though, of course, he was already the authority character. But the thing was, Vince, as himself, was not. He knew exactly what the audience wanted. He knew that if he either fought Stone Cold or if he was just a foil to Stone Cold, people wanted to see Vince get his comeuppance. They wanted to see him get his ass handed to him. And as the boss, as the owner, he was willing to oblige the fans. Always having Stone Cold give him a stunner or have him destroy a piece of property that was Vince McMahon's. But Vince, of course, as the heel, knew how to get back at Stone Cold by getting him arrested or putting him in matches. I mean, sure, Vince and Stone Cold didn't have the best matches, but no one remembers Vince and Stone Cold's matches as being technically sound. They remember as seeing this hated enemy, this hated boss person getting his ass kicked by his employee, somebody who everyone can relate to, always felt being, dragged down by their bosses. With Daniel Bryan,
see, that's the.
Oh, no, go ahead. Go ahead.
Sorry. I was going to say, see, that's the problem. It was very repetitive. Your feud. That's all they did with each other. It was Stone Cold, Stone. It was very. We're not that. Daniel Bryan.
It worked every time. Stone Cold always had the best pop.
Like Daniel Bryan versus Randy Orton in the cage. Daniel Bryan versus Triple H at WrestleMania. Daniel Bryan versus Batista versus Randy Orton. Shawn Michaels' sweet chin music to have Randy Orton beat Daniel Bryan in that cage match. We had your elements with the mic plus the matches. It was way more memorable. Plus this was one of the few times where the WWE Universe got really involved with the whole yes movement. And also, sorry, I'm going to let you do some more.
No. I was letting you continue. But here's the thing. If this was Daniel Bryan and Randy Orton from SummerSlam to the end of the year, that could make sense. But when you bring in Batista, the fact was the company was done with Bryan by putting him with the Wyatts in this little join the faction. But when Batista was added to the Royal Rumble and people were pissed off that Bryan was not coming back, it was pretty much they had no choice but to relent to get Bryan in with the Yes Movement. With Stone Cold.
And that is why my feud is so great, because it got the WWE Universe involved. It got the WWE Universe engaged to get Daniel Bryan in that match.
No, go ahead. No, just go ahead. Go ahead.
No. Keep going.
No, every time Stone Cold came to the ring, even if he did get screwed out of a title shot, even if it was maybe months down the line where he ever got to face The Undertaker again, or he got to fight against The Rock, every time Stone Cold came down, people were already engaged with him. All Stone Cold had to do was say, "You want to see me whoop this guy's ass? Give me a hell yeah. You want to see me give this man a Stone Cold stunner? Give me a hell yeah." Jim Ross and JR did their best to always make Stone Cold a bona fide superstar. And with Vince McMahon setting up his corporation as the ultimate foil to Stone Cold, because when it comes to a heel always needs some backup to fight a pretty much an unstoppable babyface, and that was what the corporation was. They were that foil. No, go ahead.
The thing what you're saying right now, it's not Stone Cold. Your thing is not Stone Cold with corporation. It's just Stone Cold. It's corporation's its own thing. The thing about the Daniel Bryan not only was my feud not only benefited the wrestlers, benefited the superstars, benefited other people, and the WWE Universe.
There were so many other wrestlers who benefited from Vince.
Whereas yours only just benefited Stone.
All right, so that was a good back and forth 5-minute period. We're going to go into the closing arguments. We started with Richard in the opening, so we're going to go back to Richard in the closing. Richard, your 60-second closing argument will begin whenever you're ready.
The feud with Stone Cold versus Vince McMahon when it comes to the mic was great. It was fun to watch. It was always fun to watch. But the problem was it got very repetitive. It was the same thing over and over and over for years after years after years. He not only had some of the great mic skills as Stone Cold and Vince did, but it has some of the greatest matches of all time. It benefited John. It made other superstars involved as well. It gave John Cena, a lot of fans like John Cena more because he passed the torch to Daniel Bryan in that sense. It got Brie Bella something to do, which, at the time, Brie Bella was just like, just there with her sister. It also got the WWE Universe involved in a way that no one has ever seen before. And it also gave opportunities for future people to be champions. So without Daniel Bryan being champion for this feud, you may never had Kofi Kingston as champion. You may never had Dean Ambrose as champion. Never had Finn Balor as champion. This feud not only benefited watching, it also benefited the future of wrestlers in the WWE. And I'll concede my time.
All right. Ryan, whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
If you want to talk about what wrestlers benefited from Stone Cold versus McMahon, as I was talking about with the corporation, it helped bring in The Rock from a mid-settled feud in the Nation of Domination, brought him into the corporation where he was the corporate champion. The battles between Stone Cold and The Rock didn't just aspire to them. It brought in the uber popular of Generation X. Mankind winning the WWF title, pretty much solidifying and bringing WWF back from the Monday Night Wars, breaking that 83-week streak. That was because of the feud between Stone Cold and Vince McMahon. Sure, they were not in the ring a lot, but it was because of their surrounding feuds. So many other wrestlers and pretty much figureheads were able to hop onto this and elevate their careers to an ungodly status. And Vince and Stone Cold have great moments. Stone Cold pouring cement into his Corvette. Stone Cold attacking Vince McMahon in the hospital, which also showed the debut of Sacco. Stone Cold versus Vince in a cage that showed the debut of the Big Show. So many other superstars were able to find this limelight and take it and roll with it.
All right. So great first question from both of our players. But now we're going to go to our judges. Now, the judges and I agreed before the recording, because I'm still a little bit under the weather from prior weeks of not feeling well. We're going to go to both of them first. And if there's any situation where I need to give any input, I will do so. But be that as it may, we're going to go to our first judge, which is Harley. Harley, where do you stand on this question? You're muted.
I do have just a quick question about judging. Richard brought up a point. Are we going with what the like Bryan versus the Authority and Stone Cold versus McMahon, with the people who were not those people but were involved in the feud? Are we qualifying those? Because Richard brought up a good point. If we're qualifying the others in the around the feud. I personally would qualify it because they played into the overall feud in general. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, definitely. Okay. With that, Ryan, you brought up a lot of good points with the fact that it was the original feud and that Bryan and versus the Authority was kind of a copy. And some of the good points that I got from you were. Vince always got his comeuppance. That was one of the things that really kept the crowd involved and really kept the crowd very active. And with Richard there, you brought up with your feud, Bryan versus the Authority. For that feud there was a lot of good matches involved with Bryan versus Randy Orton, Bryan versus Triple H and the WrestleMania 33 stuff. And it once again it was a feud that really, really depended on the crowd. And the crowd was highly, highly involved. And it benefited a lot of the wrestlers. So for the future of the wrestlers, which it let this smaller guy, quote unquote smaller guy, actually have a chance of being a main eventer on the main roster. But just like with those points, I just think Ryan was able to hit back a lot harder and just bringing more things around. But I'm going to have to give the point to Ryan here.
All right, so now let's go to Kevin, the big Hoss man. I believe that's what it says.
Yeah.
Okay, Kevin, where do you stand on this?
Yeah, my point's going to go to Ryan. I do feel like that there were some good points made by Richard. Daniel Bryan versus the Authority, though, I do feel like is just Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Mr. McMahon light. They did have there were better matches, but like Ryan said, there were more memorable moments, not necessarily memorable matches, in the Steve Austin versus McMahon rivalry. Every time they'd come, Austin would hit huge pop when that glass would break. I mean, his merch sales through the roof. The corporation was the ultimate foil, like Ryan said, provided a great place for Rocky when he turned heel. I mean, ultimately there were just too many good points that Ryan brought up, and I mean, when you used your closing, it really, that Cena and Brie Bella argument, that was kind of weak. So I feel like you could have gone a little stronger with your argument, but Ryan really brought it. So my point definitely with Ryan.
All right. So with that, Ryan takes a 1-0 lead. So with that, we're going to go to the next question, which is a very interesting one. There's a lot of different ways we could have went with this one. One of WWE's most famous, infamous matches, whatever you want to call it, would be the notorious Hell in a Cell. And we asked both of our players, what is the best Hell in a Cell match? So Richard started with the first one, so we're going to go to Ryan in this one. You're going to make your first pitch on this. What is the best Hell in a Cell match in WWE history?
With Hell in a Cell, the idea of this match is pretty much it's the idea that to install the embodiment of carnage, the embodiment of chaos into this match. This match is meant to be a way to end feuds. So whoever is facing each other in that match, they walk out a different person to when they move on to their next arc or the next chapter in wrestling. And with that idea instilled, I chose the 2015 Hell in a Cell match between The Undertaker and Brock Lesnar for these points. One, this was an ending to pretty much a trilogy of matches that happened between Brock Lesnar and The Undertaker. Also, one would say starting from WrestleMania 30 when Brock beat the Streak. Afterwards, Brock was on pretty much bulletproof sort of run, because what can you do with him? Re-enter The Undertaker. This time, with no longer the Streak in hand, Undertaker can be as brutal and as ruthless as he was. And this match was meant to end this bitter hatred between the two. All they did was when they were slamming each other against cages, ripping apart the mats of the ring in order to brutalize each other, to show that Undertaker, to prove that no matter how old he is, he can still go. And with Brock being the beast, you give him an arena, a setup to show just how dangerous he can be without any interference by Paul Heyman. No DQs involved, just two men going fist to fist until one of them walks out. I'm going to stop.
Yeah. Note that Ryan said no DQ. Take notes, WWE. So well done there, Ryan. So let's now go to Richard. Richard, what Hell in a Cell match have you chose for WWE's best Hell in a Cell?
There has been many Hell in a Cells throughout the whole time, but the thing about Hell in a Cell that is different between a cage match, because they're very similar to Elimination Chamber, is it's supposed to be feeling like you're in one Hell in a Cell match that is the best, the most iconic match of all time. It is Mankind versus The Undertaker, 1998. King of the Ring pay-per-view. This match was the greatest Hell in a Cell pay-per-view of all time. It showed Mankind versus The Undertaker in an all-out brawl. They came in, Mankind went on top of the Hell in a Cell cage. Undertaker came in, followed him up on there, and they had a brutal, brutal match where Undertaker threw Mankind off the Hell in a Cell. I'm going to continue more when it comes to the 5-minute talking. But the action that this took place, the level of endurance that both teams faced, level of endurance that Mankind faced this match, is why everyone agrees this is the best Hell in a Cell pay-per-view of all time.
All right. Richard believes everybody thinks that this is the greatest Hell in a Cell match. We will see where we will stand on that when this 5-minute debate period is over. So without further ado, the 5 minutes will start when one of you begins speaking.
Look, Ryan, the problem with your pay-per-view is it wasn't even the best Hell in a Cell Brock and Undertaker had. The 2002 Hell in a Cell match between the two was way better than the one in 2015.
There were two different circumstances between those two matches. This was Brock at the youth of his career when he was early in his run versus an Undertaker who was past his dead man gimmick trying to do something new. Sure, this should show the toughness between them, but the 2015 was all about two men who are in the definite twilight primes of their career. Brock coming from the UFC, being booked as the beast now. To whoever he fought, he dominates no matter what. With The Undertaker, he lost his streak. He had the motivation to no longer care about his legacy. He cared about destroying this man that took something from him, and that was enough to go into this match to see these two go to war and go to hell with each other. Mankind and Undertaker, when you rewatch this match, it is a little unsettling and a bit uncomfortable to watch because of the hits and the bumps that Mick Foley took. It's even hard if you want to show it to people who want to get into wrestling.
This is the whole point of Hell in a Cell, not the difference between Hell in a Cell and a cage match. Your match could have been easily done in a cage match. And not only that, Undertaker was way past his prime. He was on the floor for the majority of the times. He was exhausted like 15 minutes in. These were not a great match. Like, the best thing about your matches is when they used the chair. And Brock Lesnar undid the mat one time. And even then, it was really bad. When Undertaker tombstone Brock Lesnar, the camera caught him. Brock Lesnar's head wasn't nowhere near the ring mat when that happens. My match, on the other hand, Mankind put his body on the line. It made the reason why the Hell in a Cell match become one of the greatest type of matches, because it all hell breaks loose. The term is Hell in a Cell. Your match could have easily been done in the cage.
Match took place on top of the cell before they even got inside. It wasn't until Mankind.
That's the point of these matches. The difference between the two is it can happen anywhere. It doesn't have to take place in the ring.
Hell in a cell, not hell on top of the cell. Majority was on top of the cell. By the time Mankind got chokeslammed into the ring, the whole thing was worried that most of the match was stalled by trying to get Mankind stretchered out of there. And sure, it made for good storytelling for him to come back within his own power. But every nasty bump he took, you see the physical scars on him, to where Mick Foley has said in interviews looking back at it that it was something that he could have thought twice about. Like the bump through the cage door, through the top of the cell, that was something that almost could have killed him, to where Undertaker himself thought he killed him. I would prefer. You want to talk about that? Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was saying, them waiting for the so-called crowd. Your match is kind of boring in a sense. All they did was hit each other a couple times with the chair. Brock Lesnar with the fake blood. And again, a majority of your match was on the floor. Brock and The Undertaker were both exhausted in the match.
Well, yeah, because carrying from one of their previous matches, Undertaker tried to match like Brock's UFC style by using his submission Hell's Gate, to where it led to their previous match. It led to a submission by the ref because Brock didn't respond because he passed out. This match, sure, it may have been slow at times, but the whole point was to try to draw people in. I mean, because when you have that big structure surrounding them, you got to try to get people invested. And them trying to mimic UFC moments, especially if you see UFC fights, it's kind of slow a bit. But when you see them on the ground trying to get on top of each other, trying to establish dominance, because these two men really hate the hell out of each other. They hate each other's guts. I would rather be drawn into a match where I'm seeing two men. Go ahead.
The problem with your match, though, is it really didn't need to take place. Brock Lesnar beat Undertaker in Hell in a Cell 2002. Brock Lesnar defeated Undertaker in the streak at WrestleMania. There was no reason for Brock to even do this match. And then Brock ends up winning this match anyway. There was no particular reason. Like, why would anyone think Undertaker was going to beat Brock when he couldn't beat him in the past? Whereas Mankind beat Undertaker previous.
That's why after that streak was broken, Undertaker as a character and as a wrestler had nothing left to lose. He lost to Brock during Brock's early career. Brock took something away from Undertaker that would have established his legacy throughout WWE. With this is Undertaker at his raw, at his most brutal, at his most feral. This guy does not care about winning. He does not care about losing. He's just going in to break this guy. He's going in to break the beast towards the end, to where Brock, yeah, sure about that fake blood. This is where Brock bleeds. You see people in the crowd going, this man is not human because of the fact that he's trying to break Brock.
All right. That was good back and forth. We're going to our closing arguments. We started with Ryan. We're going to go to Ryan here for the final 60 seconds. That will begin whenever you're ready.
With Hell in a Cell, this match is, as I mentioned before, is supposed to inspire or be the incarnate of chaos, of pretty much uncontrolled fury and rage, and also, most importantly, to end feuds, to end rivalry, so wrestlers can move on to the next chapter in their careers. After Undertaker losing that streak, his main focus was going after Brock Lesnar. They had a couple of matches after Undertaker made his return. They had a regular singles match that ended in a submission to where Brock couldn't respond. So Brock had more reasons to go into this match because he did not submit to the Undertaker. He didn't tap out. It's Brock's pride against the Undertaker's pride in this situation. As I've mentioned, two men going to war. Yes, their ground game may look slow and plodding, but if you see in UFC matches, that's also like that too. Both men trying to establish dominance. This ended the feud to where Brock Lesnar moves forward to becoming the overarching WWE champion, and Undertaker becomes. Damn it!
All right, Richard. Whenever you're ready, your 60 seconds will begin.
My opponent says the Hell in a Cell matches are supposed to end feuds and careers. That is not true. There have been Hell in a Cell matches where the feud continues on. There has been no indication that Hell in a Cell would ever end a feud in any direction. My match had Undertaker in his prime, had Mick Foley in his prime. It had Undertaker throw Mankind off the Hell in a Cell into the table. Mick Foley got up, came back, went back on the top of the cage. Undertaker chokeslam Mankind on top of the Hell in a Cell cage. He fell enduring Hell in a Cell match. Fists, punches were thrown from both sides. Tacks were involved. Mankind's blood was actually his blood. It wasn't fake blood. It was an all-out war. Ryan's choice, the Hell in a Cell 2015, it had both men exhausted, both men the majority of the time on the ground, and he's talking about the fury of the match. There was really no fury. It was just two old people past their careers struggling to get breath. When it comes to a Hell in a Cell match, there is clearly only one choice. It is Mankind versus Undertaker when it brings up the Hell in a Cell.
All right. Good back and forth debate here. It's time to go to our judges. I'm going to start with Kevin on this one. Kevin, where do you stand on this?
I'm going to go with Richard on this one. With Mankind and Taker, I think it is. He made a good point about it being about how Lesnar and Taker 15 could be. It could be just a regular cage match or regular match in period. There were too many rest holds. Ryan, I like how you started your argument and how you ended it about, you made good points about how the idea of the match is to end feuds and to walk out a different person. The storytelling was there. You just didn't bring it through in the 5 minutes. I don't feel like Richard did. So he did tell the story of Mankind, and I felt that rage. And I feel like it's not really your fault. I feel like it's the PG era fault, but it's just hard to feel the rage like I felt from his match. So from a purely unbiased standpoint, I give my point to Richard.
All right. Let's go to Harley next. Harley, where do you stand?
Yeah, I'm going to be giving my point to Richard again. Ryan, you seem to be battling within yourself what exactly you wanted a Hell in a Cell match to be, whether it be like chaos, brutality, but then you wanted to hype that up for your match, but also you wanted to try to take down the Mankind Taker match for its brutality, how chaotic it was. You brought up how it's supposed to Hell in a Cell feuds are supposed to end. They're supposed to end feuds. in the last 10 years now. That's not really the point of a Hell in a Cell. It's just another. It's that time of the year for them, and also like I was saying, with your debate, and you did a lot of work to help really prove Richard's point. And Richard, you did a good job of proving your point with the purpose of the Hell in a Cell being brutal, chaotic, how historic this one was, and just because a lot of and for me, like a Hell in a Cell, as long as it's basically you're 5 feet within the outside of the cell, so basically you could be on top, you could be on the ring match, you can be climbing up the cage. For me, that still counts as part of a Hell in a Cell match, because there's a lot of Hell in a Cell matches that have taken place all over the place, and it's a clear, for me, a very clear point for Richard.
Yeah.
All right. So with that, we are now tied at 1 apiece. We're now going to go to the third question. So with that, we are guaranteed that all 4 main round questions will be asked, which I'm actually kind of happy because I actually like the fourth question. So I'm going to be interested to see how they're going to debate that one. But let's go to question 3 first. We're going to talk about TNA Impact. And the question that we have for both of our players is, what is the worst TNA Impact pay-per-view in history? So we're going to go back to Richard with this one. Richard, whenever you're ready, what is TNA Impact's worst ever pay-per-view?
When it comes to worst TNA pay-per-view, there's been a lot. Not gonna lie, I don't think any there's been some great ones, but there's been a lot of bad ones. And the choice that I chose for the worst pay-per-view of all time is TNA's Victory Road 2009. It had just very, very poor responses from the audiences. The raters, the highest match was rated a 3-star. The rest were 2.5. Had matches like Angelina Love versus Tara. Had Abyss versus Dr. Stevie. It had Kevin Nash versus AJ Styles, where Kevin Nash beat AJ Styles. You had Kurt Angle versus Mick Foley, which sounded great on paper, really wasn't. Samoa Joe versus Sting, which was okay. There was just a lot of mediocre stuff in this pay-per-view, and that is why it's the worst pay-per-view of all time, Victory Road 2009, where you had the majority of the matches people who were past their prime, and that was the problem, and that is why, again, Victory Road 2009, worst pay-per-view, TNA, and I'm done.
All right. Richard goes with Victory Road 09 for Richard. Let's go to Ryan next. Ryan, what is your selection for worst TNA Impact pay-per-view?
Well, now with TNA, it was clear that there were so many cooks in the kitchen there that they couldn't be able to put together a decent pay-per-view if they tried. I mean, they have on their best moments, but mostly my pay-per-view is not that far off from Richard's, but this one has the ultimate black mark, the ultimate asterisk on this one, and that is Victory Road 2011. This match may not have had as many title bouts as Richards did, not as many wrestlers involved, but the fact was that they had matches like Dreamer versus Bully Ray in a Falls Count Anywhere match. They had Kazarian, Robbie E, Jeremy, Max, Buck, the Young Bucks, who were at the time called Generation Me, in an Ultimate X match that normally with Ultimate X matches, they're usually the best of a pay-per-view. This one was maybe given like a 2-star or a low C-. But then the following, you had Mr. Anderson against RVD, 2 men who you have seen in different companies put on good shows. Mr. Anderson could barely put together simple connecting moves like arm drags. He couldn't even do his own finisher correctly. And then you had the piece de resistance, Jeff Hardy versus Sting, the most worldwide known match, because Jeff Hardy came out heavily intoxicated throughout his entrance, barely making it to the ring, to where by the time Sting came out, that X was thrown to where this was an ultimate botch. The fans were shouting out, "This sucks," with Sting closing the pay-per-view saying, "I agree."
All right. So It's Victory Road versus Victory Road, which Victory Road will be the worst TNA Impact pay-per-view of all time. Whenever you're ready, take it away.
Look, Richard, you wanted to talk about how your match had a lot of people past their prime. Well, that's pretty much most TNA matches since they started bringing in, since Jeff Jarrett was running it, when he brought in Christian Cage, when he brought in Macho Man, he brought in DDP, Conan, R-Truth. Just with this pay-per-view, mine started off at a pretty middle bar, and it couldn't meet it until it finally got to maybe its tag title match or its X Division match. And even then, there was no high bar for it to set. With your matches, though, the ones that you had Team 3D versus the British Invasion for the IWGP tag titles at the time when TNA still had their connection with New Japan. So having a company from New Japan put their titles on the line at a TNA pay-per-view was something more different than compared to Victory Road, when it was nothing but just their own titles.
Okay, you're saying yours start at the middle? Mine couldn't. My best match was the middle. Mine couldn't even get up to the middle. You had some great matches. The only really bad match was the main event, Sting versus Jeff Hardy, and that was Jeff Hardy's fault. It was not Sting's fault. It was Jeff Hardy's fault. You had AJ versus Matt Hardy.
I never said
it was AJ versus Matt Hardy was one of the greatest TNA matches. It was a really good match.
Matt was very sluggish throughout the match, where AJ was mostly carrying him. Abyss versus Dr. Stevie in your match, it was a no disqualification where you had two men who were solidified with hardcore matches in their belts. With Kurt Angle versus Mick Foley, sure, it wasn't going to be. People did have a lot of hype behind it, but at the time with Mick Foley, he was pretty much known as being the wild and out of control crazy character that he used to implement into his wrestling style. And you want to talk about that Sting and Jeff Hardy was the worst match? I said the worst match was RVD versus Mr. Anderson, where Mr. Anderson could barely connect moves, barely do arm drags, couldn't even do his finisher right, to where he had to redo it again with the people clearly seeing it.
No, I was saying that Sting versus Jeff Hardy was your worst match. I didn't say that you said that. I said that. I am saying that. But yeah, I understand there was a couple botches, but it was still a fun match. Even though your X Division match wasn't the greatest X Division that I ever had, it was still a fun, exciting match. Fans were still involved. Matt Hardy was a little sluggish, but even the critics who were watching that match said that this was the Matt Hardy, seemed to be like the old Matt Hardy, that he was actually more engaged than he has been in a long time. You also Tommy Dreamer, great, absolutely terrible. It was Kevin Nash, AJ Styles. Kevin Nash beat AJ Styles, and Kevin Nash was terrible in that match. He was doing multiple botches. You could tell like he could not wrestle anymore. Samoa Joe versus Sting was probably my best match. It wasn't that great. And then Abyss versus Dr. Stevie was terrible. 3D versus British Invasion was okay. But as for your match, you had a lot of great matches. Your only bad match was Sting versus Jeff Hardy. And like I said, Jeff Hardy, that was on him. The fans were more disappointed because at least potential that Sting and Jeff Hardy could have had. All right, I'll let you go now.
No, it wasn't the potential of the match. It was the fact that the bookers, the people involved, allowed Jeff Hardy to go out to the ring like that. They may have had the smart decency to end it, but even then, there were still some bad matches following up to it. There was the tag titles between Beer Money and Ink Inc. A very green tag team Ink Inc. was going up against some establishments to where they couldn't be, where Beer Money had mostly carried them throughout the matches. They had to sell more than Ink Inc. was selling. I had the TNA Knockouts tag titles, a very new title established in TNA that was supposed to be a landmark for the company to say that we're ahead of other wrestling organizations. And the match they had with Rosita and Sarita, two other green people going up against Angelina and Winter. That match, only one of them was the veteran, and that was Angelina Love. Most of these matches had so many people who were green being thrust into the main spotlight. Sure, you may have people past their prime, but in your Victory Road matches, there were people who were familiar with the spotlight. They knew how to pace themselves, and they were able to at least carry some of their opponents to at least fairly decent matches to the middle. My matches barely met the middle of the bar.
Mine didn't even get up to the middle. Beer Money versus Ink Wink was a fun match. It was good. The fans were definitely involved. You had Hernandez versus Matt Morgan. That was a great match.
They bossed
Tommy Dreamer versus Bully Ray. It was a solid opening match. Tommy Dreamer versus Bully Ray. That was a good match. The Kazarian, like I say, your X Division match was great.
Yeah, that was the one.
It could have been better, but it was still. Your Anderson RVD was still better than my Kevin.
Only one of our matches actually had to refund or at least offer rewards for how bad it was.
My high.
All right, so we're going to go into the closing arguments. We're going to go back to Richard here. Richard, your closing argument will begin whenever you're ready.
The difference between Victory Road 2009 and Victory Road 2011 is that Ryan says it was good at the middle, start in the middle, and didn't go up. Mine never got to the middle. My best match rated for critics was a 3-star. The rest were all about 2.5 to 3-ish. You had some great Victory Road 2011 had some great matches. It was AJ versus Matt Hardy was a great match. It seemed like Matt Hardy was coming back to the old Matt Hardy that we have known and loved from the Hardy Boys. You had a great Tommy Dreamer versus Bully Ray match. X Division match was still fun. It wasn't the greatest X Division match there ever was, but it was still an X Division match, and people enjoy those types of matches. Beer Money versus Ink Inc. was a good match. I don't know why you say just because Ink Inc. wasn't, as known as Beer Money. It was still a good match. Sting versus Jeff Hardy, yes, it was. It lasted like not even a minute, but it was because of Jeff Hardy and the drug addiction. It wasn't Sting. The audience, I can understand the expectations to his main event would have been better.
Time.
But again,
all right, Ryan, whenever you're ready, you can take it away.
Look, as much as you want to downplay the fact that that Victory Road 29 did not get to the middle, I disagree with that. Angelina Love versus Tara was a good match to kick off the pay-per-view there. And then, of course, we had Abyss versus Dr. Stevie in no disqualification. Two men who were familiar with the hardcore genre. These men knew how to sell a match and how to make it hard-hitting. The IWGP titles, as I mentioned, this was Team 3D at the time when TNA still had a partnership with New Japan. At least with Victory Road 2009, there was a lot going into it where it looked like TNA could see as a promising career. A company, 2011 showed them bottoming out with RVD versus Anderson, where Anderson was botching all over the place. A man who was supposed to be an established veteran. You had green wrestlers like Ink Inc., Rosita and Sarita barely working. Jeff Hardy versus Sting was so bad, the company had to offer people 6 months of free membership to their own subscription channel because of how disappointing it was.
All right, so regardless of what I said before, I'm actually going to break what I said, and I'm actually going to start this one. So apologies, everyone. I lied, like Eddie Guerrero. What else is new? This was an interesting match because, like I said, I was not the biggest TNA fan, but I was very familiar with both of these pay-per-views. I remember both of the hatred that both these pay-per-views got. When it came down to it, there was one match that I specifically remembered from Richard's pay-per-view, and Richard never brought it up, and that was the Survivor Chick versus Queen Sharmell match, a match that Dave Meltzer gave -5 stars, Brian Alvarez gave -5 stars, and was never brought up at any point during the match, which that was really unfortunate for Richard, I felt, because that, along with the fact that you can make a case that arguably one of TNA's hottest figures was Daphne, and was completely cast off by the wayside for this entire pay-per-view, was another big deal. When it came down to it, I felt that Richard had a lot of ammunition that he just was not able to unload on this. I felt Ryan executed the points that he needed to make with the bad main event. Had a lot of botches, a lot of under-delivering matches. So me personally, I'm going to give it my point to Ryan here with Victory Road 11. So we're going to go to Harley next. Harley, where do you stand?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, I fully agree. Richard, if you had mentioned Survivor Jenna versus Sharmell match, that would have been your ace in the hole for Sting versus Jeff Hardy. Because despite those are equally the two worst matches in TNA history. And of course, like minus 5 stars, like that's made Brian Alvarez a good amount of money, merchandising wise, with his rant. And it just you, Richard, for your debate, for a lot of your stuff, you've when it comes to Victory Road 2009, you focused a lot of just people past their prime, but you didn't really talk too much about the matches, with the exception of just I just couldn't really believe you, the arguments there, and it just like with Ryan, with a lot of the botches, you hit hard on Jeff versus Sting, which did cost a lot of refunds. And they left the crowd went home pissed, which is something you never ever want to do at the end of a pay-per-view. Just look what happened recently with WWE. And basically and just Ryan, with how your matches just they'd be lucky if they hit the middle of the bar, and just like not a lot of green people and a lot of botches, just not good. And I'm going to have to give my point to Ryan on this one.
All right. So with that, Ryan takes a 2-1 lead. All right, so we're going to get into the final question here. Obviously, if Ryan takes the point on this one, he will be the winner. We're going to go into the Royal Rumble because Survivor Series is coming around. So we're going to talk about the Royal Rumble instead, because who cares about Survivor Series? Certainly not I. SmackDown is actually going on as we're doing this because this shows our priorities. We have better things to do.
We're not really missing much.
Wait, people still watch SmackDown?
Well, it's on Fox, so they're trying.
Yeah, well, yeah, give them that. So this is an interesting question because I wanted to see where both of our players fit on this. We wanted to ask our players what Royal Rumble match would have been improved with a different winner. So this was kind of a two-part kind of question. So it was basically what match would have been improved and what match would the different winner should have been. So, yeah, I didn't really word that very well, but we'll let our players take care of that for us. Just listen in, you'll see what I mean. So we're going to go with Ryan here. Ryan, what is your selection for a Royal Rumble that would have been improved had a different wrestler won?
Okay, for my choice of the Rumble, I chose the Royal Rumble 2016, the one where Triple H, where the WWE World Heavyweight title was on the line, and it was booked as Roman Reigns versus everyone, where Roman entered as number one, and where ultimately Triple H ended up winning the Royal Rumble, becoming the WWE champion. My pick would have been, instead of Triple H winning, I would have picked Dean Ambrose to win for the championship. Because when Dean Ambrose came in there, he not only did he get a huge pop, but so many other people that showed up. You had AJ Styles making his debut. You had Kevin Owens coming on his hot trails as the prize fighter. You had Bray Wyatt still in the heat of the fans. Even after his loss to John Cena, he still was able to recover that heat he had. You had Brock Lesnar showing up. So many potentials there, and all of them had one-on-one stares with Dean Ambrose. Either a standoff or it was just they were brawling with each other. Having Dean Ambrose win the title, you would have gotten more time to maybe retool Roman Reigns to maybe have him focus on his feud with Triple H, to where you could have Dean Ambrose versus Bray Wyatt at Roadblock end of the line, or you could have had him versus Kevin Owens, and then leading to WrestleMania, it could have been him in a triple threat match versus, let's say, AJ Styles, Kevin Owens, or Dean Ambrose versus Bray Wyatt in a singles match, in order to give the fans to come home with something. To go home happy instead of having Roman Reigns defeat Triple H and just having everything end up mild.
All right, so interesting choice from Ryan. We're going to go to Richard next. Richard, what have you chosen for a more improved Royal Rumble had a different wrestler won?
The most obvious choice was the most mediocre Royal Rumble of all time. It was the 1993 Royal Rumble, and I would have chose Macho Man Randy Savage to win the Royal Rumble over Yokozuna. This Royal Rumble match was very mediocre. Undertaker was in it. I mean, it was in his prime, but he got eliminated pretty quick. The most nasty boys are in it. Again, it was just a very mediocre Royal Rumble, and it could have had so much pop if Macho Man, which was everyone loved Macho Man because he was Macho Man Randy Savage. Ooh, yeah. He already was a fan favorite, and it would have just been such an amazing pop if Macho Man won over Yokozuna. Not only that, Bret Hart being WrestleMania, just the idea of Bret Hart versus Macho Man Randy Savage at WrestleMania would have had the fans go crazy. But again, this Royal Rumble was just mediocre. It was so amazing, and I'm going to talk about it more once we go into the fighting time.
All right, so we got the 2016 Rumble versus the 93 Royal Rumble. Definitely a two completely different eras of the Rumble and its history. So going to be interesting to see where both of our players choose to debate this one. But the 5-minute debate period will begin when the first person begins speaking.
The problem with you wanting Dean Ambrose to win the Royal Rumble is Dean Ambrose had nothing to do with the storyline that they were leading up. They were leading up to Triple H versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania. They already had that confrontation storyline, and having Dean Ambrose win for no reason would have just been dumb at the time. I love Dean Ambrose, but having him win for no... No, keep on.
They had the WWE World Heavyweight title on the line. What would have made this match more memorable, not just with the debut of AJ Styles, was the fact that the title was on the line. Any wrestler could have walked off as that, but Dean Ambrose made more sense, not because he had the best pop, but because while at the time with Triple H and Roman, you could have put those two aside in their own little feud, and Dean Ambrose could have been not transitional champion, but he could have been the guy to test with the heavyweight belt on him, because he had himself a brutal feud with Bray Wyatt. He was his square off against Kevin Owens. You saw something brewing there to where Kevin Owens could have gotten the spotlight put on him, to where I mentioned with Roadblock in the line, he had a WWF shot against Triple H, and it was more memorable with those two feuding than with Roman and Triple H. Inserting Dean Ambrose would have made the build to WrestleMania very unpredictable.
The thing is, though, your Royal Rumble was memorable. As you said, it was AJ Styles' debut. That's what people remember of that Royal Rumble, and it was an amazing debut. It was great. Everyone loved it. And again, you're talking about Kevin Owens and Dean Ambrose. It had nothing to do with the storyline they were developing for WrestleMania, Triple H and Roman Reigns. You're just adding in other people that had no reason to be for that story. If anything, Dean Ambrose should have been
and create something new.
But here's the thing: as a storyline, as what they were trying to set up, there was no reason for Dean Ambrose to win. If anything, if you wanted Dean Ambrose to be one to eliminate Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose would have gone over the top rope to allow Triple H. That would have been a better story for that continuous story and have some matches there. Whereas my Royal Rumble, sorry, I'm thinking of WrestleMania in the brain, which didn't have the pop Macho Man Randy Savage did. Yokozuna was just like, everyone was like, okay, he's supposed to be a bad guy. There was some reaction, but Macho Man was the one everyone wanted to win. It would have been a better ending to this Royal Rumble, because my Royal Rumble didn't really have any memorable moments like yours did. Yours had the AJ Styles debut. You had some great legends come in there for debuting, which was always fun. Mine didn't have any of that, and it ended with one of the most botchiest eliminations from Yokozuna to Randy Savage.
Which kind of says a lot about yours. I mean, you had the botch thing, which was Randy Savage, who had the biggest pop. For some reason, was booked to do an elbow drop and pin Yokozuna to it led to that one. No, I would have taken my Royal Rumble because the fact that when Triple H showed up at number 30, it was clear nobody wanted Roman Reigns to win. And sure, that would have added more to the storyline. But with Dean Ambrose eliminating Triple H or Roman, it adds unpredictability because it's where the company, because this is not the first time the company has chosen someone and the crowd hated that. They hated that with Roman Reigns. They hated that with Batista. They didn't like it before when they did it with Randy Orton, even though it was different. But the fact was with Dean Ambrose, it shows that they were willing to put a risk onto Ambrose to maybe craft a new storyline heading into WrestleMania to where it could have merged on in. Like I mentioned, a triple threat match. We could have did where Triple H, as the heel authority, tried to insert himself against Ambrose, but Roman keeps showing up and being the foil every time to where it leads to a WrestleMania triple threat. Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, and Triple H.
The question was, to yourself, no one wanted Roman Reigns to win. And when Triple H eliminated Roman Reigns, everyone was cheering, want Roman Reigns to be champion anymore, and that happened. Also, people are excited AJ debuted. That was also the thing. Mine didn't have any really reactions. Yeah, the whole elbow drop thing, people were kind of laughing. It was okay, but again, no one wanted Yokozuna. No one thought Yokozuna was going to win, and everyone didn't have a kind of reaction when he won. And the WrestleMania, when it came in, it was just it wasn't any memorable match. At least your Triple H Roman Reigns match at WrestleMania was actually pretty good, and everyone enjoyed it.
It went too long.
Dean Ambrose win again. There was no reason for Dean Ambrose to even think about this. Wasn't the story. He wasn't there yet, and you were adding whole other things. Why Dean being champion, taking on Kevin Owens? That was not the direction they were going. If they were going that way, they would have done it. Whereas
it would have been
mine
much better than having them to reshuffle everything after WrestleMania 32. Having them fix, at least adjust and tweak on the way to WrestleMania 32 would have made a better build-up in storylines, and also would have built the foundation of Kevin Owens, AJ Styles. Oh, damn it.
So we're gonna go into the closing arguments now. We're gonna start with Ryan. Whenever you're ready, Ryan, your 60 seconds will begin when you start speaking.
Going into the Royal Rumble, having the main event be for the World Heavyweight, for the WWE Championship, with also being a Royal Rumble, was something they had not done since the 92 Royal Rumble. And it was because of this moment, it was clear Roman going into this that, sure, no one wanted him to win, and the company could have decided he wins anyway. But the fact is, Triple H ended up winning, and it just didn't feel right. If you wanted to inject some unpredictability, if you wanted to inject a third party or someone who could at least carry the title leading into WrestleMania when Roman Reigns gets his shot, was Dean Ambrose. Sure, there was AJ Styles' debut, was great, but but when you see it, Ambrose, he was coming off a feud with Bray Wyatt. He was already having so much heat to where the crowd almost preferred him. When Ambrose nearly eliminated Triple H, that pop was so huge. And if he actually did, he would have won the title. Moving forward, he could have had great matches against Bray Wyatt, Kevin Owens, giving them better WrestleMania 32 moments than Bray Wyatt having to be punked out by The Rock and John Cena.
I'm impressed, Ron. You didn't say it. It's like you had to break tradition. All right, Richard, whenever you're ready.
And give me that minute extension.
All right.
Since we can't use it.
Your 2 minutes will begin whenever you're ready.
The question is, who should have won the Royal Rumble what year to make the match be improved? Now, my Royal Rumble, it was me. Royal Rumble, it was, yay, our favorite wrestler is going to win. There was nothing memorable about my Royal Rumble. It was mediocrity. With the Royal Rumble 2016, there was AJ Styles premiere. There were at least legends premiering, always the Royal Rumble. That's always fun. You had some fun, entertaining things in there. And the story-wise, it was in the beginning of January, Triple H, Roman Reigns. Roman Reigns didn't want to be the yes man. So that's why Triple H wanted to screw Roman Reigns out of the title. That was the story they were going with. There was no reason why Dean Ambrose would be even in the picture. The feud right now was Roman Reigns and Triple H. There was no reason for Dean Ambrose to win. There was a bigger pop when everyone thought Santino Marella was going to win the Royal Rumble when Alberto Del Rio threw him out. Again, you had some great memorable moments. You had, like, I'm going to say it again, AJ Styles. That's what everyone talked about. That was very memorable. There's nothing memorable about my Royal Rumble. At least with my Royal Rumble, if Macho Man would have won, everyone, yay, Macho Man's going to win. Face Bret Hart at WrestleMania. And again, for your WrestleMania, Roman Reigns Triple H was a great match. There was great stirring, and you can't just add in other people just because you thought you liked Dean Ambrose over Triple H. I thought Triple H was a great heel at the time. He was fun as a champion, and it stirred up Roman Reigns to give him some of his best performances. I can't even remember half the stuff on my Royal Rumble. That's how unmemorable it would have been. That is why, out of mine, by far, Macho Man winning over Yokozuna would have been way better than Dean Ambrose winning over Triple H. I'm done.
All right. So, obviously, this is a very important question. Our judges got a big decision ahead of them. We're going to start with Kevin, because we didn't go to you in the last question. Where do you stand on this?
I am going to go in a close one here. I'm going to give my point to Ryan. That's not the way I thought I was going to go at the beginning, but he just kept coming with the facts. He named the wrestlers. He used his closing in the way that he should have. Talked about the pop when Triple H was almost eliminated by Ambrose. Richard, I think you made the right choice, but everything kept going back to you trying to fight off everything Ryan kept saying. And when it comes to that, it just makes it where I don't hear enough about your match, and that makes it hard for me to get enough info about yours. So my point does go to Ryan.
All right. So we're going to go to Harley next. Harley, do you agree with Kevin's assessment?
Can I get a clarification on the exact wording of the question?
What Royal Rumble would have been improved if a different wrestler had won?
Okay. I guess it can improved. That can go both ways. You guys both hit because like in a lot of ways, I love a Royal Rumble match, but it's also what comes afterwards too, like improved. Would have like Dean Ambrose taking the place. Dean Ambrose being the champion and having Roman Reigns and Triple H doing their stuff separately outside there. With that, Ryan, until your closing argument, you mentioned what came afterwards, like that WrestleMania. It's also basically you gotta remember the same roughly about the same result. Basically, just take out Yokozuna and put in Randy Savage. Randy Savage versus Bret Hart, then Randy Savage versus Hogan. No matter what, the winner of that Rumble is going to lose the title to Hogan. So there's always that.
That WrestleMania real quick was Bret Hart was in the match. It was Bret Hart versus Yokozuna for the belt for that WrestleMania.
And then then Hogan.
So my match for WrestleMania would have been Macho Man versus Bret.
Yeah, but Harley's saying that at the end, Hogan still would have came in and won the belt when it was all over, because that was the WrestleMania 9.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, I didn't understand that.
And Hogan wanted the title back. So it's just like that. It's just like a behind the scenes drama, especially at that period. To see Randy Savage having to do the job to Hogan at that time period, but it's also Macho Man at that time period as well. He was mostly an announcer, like he wasn't. Having him win the Royal Rumble really wouldn't have mean much, just because he was doing a lot of the Raw commentating at that time. Like WWE, Vince McMahon didn't. So it's just like you do that. And so just as the result, I don't think it just Ryan hit it harder what that winner of that Royal Rumble would have led to, and like all the possible match. The other feuds that he could have gone into, and also we would have had Roman Reigns and Triple H on doing their own separate thing. Richard, you didn't really hit home what Macho Man winning. You just mentioned a lot of that. Your Rumble match wasn't memorable. It wasn't, like you said yourself. You couldn't remember much of what happened during it, and it just you didn't
And
hit
that's the point of the
you
question.
hit the top. No, but it's also they improved. So it's also improving what comes afterwards too. And I think Ryan hit home a lot harder. What improves with Dean Ambrose doing it with you, what improves is a pop. That's all you defended against was it just give a pop of a dull Royal Rumble match. Other than that, it doesn't really improve anything.
All right. So with that, that's gonna end this match. Ryan Payne has won this match. He has overcome his earlier defeat. So let's get into a couple of post-match interviews. Let's start with the unfortunate non-winner tonight. Richard, obviously that didn't go the way that you were hoping, I'm sure. Is there anything that you felt that you could have improved that may have turned the tables a bit?
Oh, there's always things I can definitely hope I always want to improve in, you know. As I keep on doing this, I'm only getting better. There's always things I need to work on. It was a great match. Ryan did a good job. I'm a little bummed I didn't win. I felt like, in my opinion, that I answered the last question better than my opponent. But again, it's not my decision. It is the judge's decision. And I wish Ryan the best of luck. This was a fun match. And I can only come back stronger after every time I did this. So it's all good fun.
All right. So now let's go to the winner here. And Ryan, I got some good news and some bad news. The good news is that you've won this match and you're going to get a #1 contenders match. Kind of the bad news is now you're going to have to face Mr. Sean Wassacrew, who has run roughshod over everybody. Has not lost a single debate question as of yet. I'm sure a lot of people are going to say you have your work cut out for you. So knowing that, how do you approach a match against a seemingly invincible, unstoppable opponent?
As someone who has judged one of Sean's matches before, I can definitely see how hard-hitting he is. I mean, the way he ran roughshod to get to the Nerd Fights title is one thing. So when it comes down to it, I mean, it might mostly fall into a back-and-forth screaming match between me and Sean, but ultimately it's just going to be to Richard pretty much showed I have clear holes in my arguments. I personally felt he stayed on point. I mean, we both presented both different arguments for question 4. But one thing's for sure, moving forward against Sean, if he does look at this, mainly the guy he's seen playing up against Richard is not going to be the same person. I will have more bullet points, more flashcards to keep me on point. I will be more aware of the time to where I will be self-timing myself to make sure I know what I'm saying within a certain amount of time. So by the time Sean and I get our match going, let's just say Sean will not. If Sean seeks to knock me out, that won't be possible. He's going to have to fight to take me out, just like Richard did in our first encounter, how he took me out, just like how so many other guys have taken me out. I'm not going to be the same competitor as I was by getting knocked out of Game Zone, or most of my most recent matches have shown I either lose in a 3-1 match or I lose in the speed round. So Sean better prepare himself, because just what I thought I was going to go to the speed round here. Sean better make sure that he's prepared to go to the speed round when I face him. And if he ever thinks of a knockout, he's going to need to make sure. He's got to be damn sure that he gets every judge to agree with him. If it's a split decision every time, Sean, you may have gotten a knockout, but it was not an easy victory for you. Sure, you may have gotten a knockout, but it doesn't matter. But ultimately, as I said, I'm taking you either to the speed round or I'm taking you in a 3-1 loss. I don't look for knockouts. I love a knockout, but I'm not looking for one. I want a good match, and I know you are a good opponent. But one thing's for sure, when I fight someone who has beaten me, I come back even harder. I come back more ferocious. Ask Matt. He may have a 3-0 win against me in our rivalry, but in our last 2 matches, I've taken him to the speed round both times, and he has won by the skin of his teeth. So, Sean, please do your homework, and I'm going to do my homework on you.
All right, and don't change everything about you. You keep the dams in there, because then we won't have any of these videos removed from the,
I'm
from the
going to be more
COPA Act
fucking frustrated.
and all that crap. Because yeah, apparently now nothing can be kid friendly anymore. So bring on the cuss words,
Google
everybody.
is screwed. Or sorry, YouTube is screwed.
Yeah. So
it won't matter.
So
We don't want videos.
Well, we think of our alternate options of where we will be doing our potential future videos. We're going to be closing up shop here on behalf of everybody here. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in for this one. Very good, competitive match from everybody. So let's get some plugs here. Let's start with Richard. Where can the good people find you?
Oh, they can find me on Facebook under Richard Schwartz. You can find me on YouTube and Twitter under where I do WWE. You can find me walking around LA because I got nothing better else to do.
All right, Ryan, where can the good people find you?
Well, everyone can find me here on Facebook under with my profile, Ryan Payne. Message me. We can have ourselves good talks. We can stream, do one-on-one conversations about wrestling, gaming, pretty much anything. Get to know me a little more. Also, keep looking out for me more on TMG, not just for my #1 contenders match against Sean, but later in December, I'm going to be fighting for the late TV Fights Championship against Jay Burns. So please keep your eyes open on that. And hopefully down the line, you'll start seeing me in a lot of trivia matches happening in other leagues. But so far, keep your eyes posted here on TMG Entertainment, where I am fighting for the late TV Fights belt. And hopefully, you will see me challenge for the Chokeslam Championship. Hopefully is right. And thanks for the plug for TMG Entertainment. That means we can keep this a little bit shorter. So on behalf of everybody here tonight, thank you for joining in for this episode of the Chokeslam Wrestling Debate. On behalf of everybody here, thank you for watching. And until next time, we all bid you adieu.